We do search for the Father, for shelter and meaning that can simply be received from a paternal authority. And many of us have fathers who, while never achieving the perfection our childish heart may long for, do an extraordinary job of both sheltering and interpreting. I was blessed to have such a father, and yet I learned very early that there were traumas he could not protect me from, and answers that he did not have. I am quite sure today that my own life, the life that follows, for better and for worse, from my own making, began with the intuition that my father could not rescue me from the most serious blows I endured as a youth. Of course he couldn't. No father can. And so, emotionally, I learned what it was like to be alone. But then I also began to feel a certain excitement at the autonomy and self-possession this opened to me. The loss of that illusionary, all-knowing father was also the opportunity to make my own life. Barack Obama's first book, Dreams from My Father, chronicles his search for his father, and it is especially poignant because his father left the family when Barack was only 2, and except for one brief visit when Barack was 10, never returned. Superficial logic might suggest that an absent father would spare the child all the illusions involved in the search for the father. But of course, the opposite is true. When the father is not there, he usually becomes larger than life, an image assembled out of longing and imagination. He often becomes the idealized father that everyone wants, but that no one gets. As such, he necessarily becomes an obsession in ways that real and present fathers never do. But there will also be an ongoing sense of injustice, of being cheated, because the father's absence is also a denial of birthright. Worse, it is a kind of rejection, so one longs for him and resents him at the same time. Barack Obama's fall from illusion to reality came on the night he met his older sister, Alma, for the first time. She is their father's daughter by his first African wife, and on her first night in Barack's tiny Chicago apartment, she describes their father as he really was. And the man Barack had always pictured as a formidable patriarch emerges as a figure of pathos, a man of some talent beset by petty weaknesses and the sort of arrogance that covers an inner faithlessness. Barack writes, "I felt as if my world had been turned on its head, as if I had woken up to find a blue sun in the yellow sky. All my life I had carried a single image of my father, the brilliant scholar, the generous friend, the upstanding leader. My father had been all those things and more, because except for that one brief visit in Hawaii, he had never been present to foil that image, because I hadn't seen what perhaps most men see at some point in their lives, their father's body shrinking, their father's best hopes dashed, their father's face lined with grief and regret." Barack's father had created several families in Africa and America and then left them. He supported some children spottily, others not at all. But he managed to mark all his children with abandonment. He ruined a promising career in government through arrogance and inflexibility, and then watched his lessers rise above him. More and more he turned to drink. On that night in Chicago, Barack saw his father tarred, feathered, and hanging from a rail. Now, as I sat in the glow of a single light bulb, rocking slightly on a hard-backed chair, the inflated image of his father vanished. Replaced by what? A bitter drunk? An abusive husband? A defeated, lonely bureaucrat? To think that all my life I had been wrestling with nothing more than a ghost. And then the epiphany. The king is overthrown, I thought. The emerald curtain is pulled aside. I can do what I damn well please. For what man, if not my father, has the power to tell me otherwise? Whatever I do, it seems, I won't do much worse than he did. Reading Obama's moving account of that long-ago Chicago night, his sister asleep on the fold-out couch, him rocking back and forth in a straight-backed chair under a single light bulb, one can only cheer for him. What an extraordinary liberation to achieve after so many years. Yes, his fall into reality leaves him alone, but even so, the company is better. And there is the consolation of a surprising irony. The father who gave him so little, in the end, gave him the best gift a father can give: authority over his own life. Chapter 4. Becoming an Authentic Black. Nevertheless, to find release from the actual father is not necessarily to be done wrestling with paternal authority. And to have lived so long in the void left by an absent father, to have gone through so much idealization and longing in one's most formative years, to have so insistently nurtured oneself on a chimera, well, this is how archetypes implant their forms within us. And these forms often remain to echo throughout our lives, even after the vulnerability that originally caused them has been overcome. Did Barack Obama's search for his real father simply fold into his search for a secure black identity? Was this identity a surrogate father, a more dependable manifestation of paternal authority? It is hard to go with a psychology this pat, in which the correspondences are so perfectly symmetrical. The father and the racial identity as neatly interchangeable objects of quest. It goes too far to argue that Obama sought racial identity in his father and a father in racial identity. Still, he comes close to saying just this. On that night, when the father of his imaginings crashes to earth, one of his most agonized cries has to do with identity. Yes, I'd seen weaknesses in other men I might love but never emulate, white men and brown men whose fates didn't speak to my own. It was into my father's image, the black man, son of Africa, that I'd packed all the attributes I sought in myself, the attributes of Martin and Malcolm, Du Bois and Mandela. My father's voice had remained untainted, inspiring, rebuking, granting or withholding approval. You do not work hard enough, Barry. You must help in your people's struggle. Wake up, black man. Yes, but wake up as a black man where? In his upscale private high school in Hawaii, where his people's struggle could have been no more than a textbook reference? At Columbia and Harvard universities, where minority students are so showered with opportunity that racial protest can only be theater? The black identity that Obama projects in this passage has the same feel of idealization and longing that his original vision of his father had.